Good evening, everyone. Please confirm that you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you, Mariam. Good evening and welcome. My name is Adeshola, and it's yet another weekend of learning, unlearning, relearning. I'd like to welcome you to class once again. We'd like to also implore us to please kindly get our classmates in. We're just about 47. Oh, not even up to that. Sorry, I must have seen wrongly. Just about 35. Please, chairpersons, if you're on the call, kindly nudge your fellow party members to please come into the class. We are slowly, gradually, surely but steadily, coming towards the end of this journey. So let's keep the momentum going. Let's not relent. Let's not relax. Today, we'll be looking at media and information literacy. Yes. Today is how to spot misinformation and disinformation. We will give a couple of more minutes for everyone to come back in, and then we'll go through all that we have to go through today. We'll also be reading the profile of our facilitator. So once again, please go into your respective class groups and nudge everyone to come into the class. Thank you. Also, do not forget to rename your Zoom with your appropriate names. If you want to add your parties, that's fine, but ensure that you don't have iPhone or Samsung or any other name that it's not easily identifiable. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll be back in 3 minutes to kick off. Thank you once again. All right. Good evening once again. We have doubled the numbers, still low, but we will kick off in earnest. Please continue to nudge your fellow classmates to come into the class. We will kick off in earnest, and it's always good to start the beginning of a thing well. It doesn't do anyone good to come in the middle of the class whilst you didn't get the benefit of starting. So please let's do that quickly whilst I go through the profile of our facilitator. Today, we will be handling a topic that we have tagged media and information literacy, how to spot misinformation and disinformation. Our facilitator this evening is someone we all may have heard or are familiar with, even right here at the region. But he is an accomplished fact checker and researcher at Dubawa, Nigeria, with a degree in mass communication from Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. He is also a distinguished fellow at the African Institute for Open Source Information. Open source investigation, I beg your pardon, where he has contributed significantly to research on information ecosystems in Nigeria and West Africa, particularly in relation to information disorder. So you see that our facilitator today is walking his talk. He possesses expertise in the use of fact-checking tools for verification and has conducted several consequential fact checks, earning him a nomination at the 2021 Africa Check Awards. He is a member of the WHO's Viral Fact Alliance, and he has debunked various COVID-19 related claims while actively participating in initiatives to provide explainers and media literacy articles during the pandemic. Furthermore, this gentleman is an active member of the Nigerian Fact Checkers Coalition, NFC, where he has played an integral role in monitoring elections and debunking numerous electoral related claims. With his exceptional research skills and expertise in fact checking, he is an asset to the field of journalism and information verification in Nigeria and beyond Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the honor and the privilege to walk us through this topic today on how to spot misinformation and disinformation, and generally about media and information literacy. We have the honor of welcoming Mr. Silas Jonathan as he takes us on this topic. You're welcome, sir. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you so much for this wonderful introduction. When you read it, I'm like, is this me or someone else? But yeah, I mean, it's always a pleasure to be here. It is a pleasure not just to be here, but because realizing the importance of what we are doing. And I always say this, and I've been saying it recently. I say democracy in Africa is at a crossroad. You know, there are lots of threats. We're seeing how authoritarian governments are becoming bolder. We're seeing how military government is expanding, and we're seeing how the landscape of all that democracy stands for is beginning to weaken. So for all the folks here, you're doing an important thing, just being here. And as we know, whether it is fake news, and in other words, myths and disinformation, people have used all sorts of lies in the past to fuel all sorts of narrative. And even democracy in this case is not even it's not safe at this point, because it's also suffering from the same thing when people use lies to paint rather a new reality. And this brings me to the core of our conversation today, which is media and information literacy and how to spot myths and disinformation. I think I know a few people here in in person. I can see the names, or even online. I think I know quite a number. So it's not a new place for me to have a good conversation. It has to be interactive. So if you have something to say, or I ask a question, you have a comment, please, it's very important that you share your ideas. Why? Because when we talk about information, and even if it is limited down to myths and disinformation, it is not just from one person's perspective. It is a generic conversation that people see it from different perspectives. And I'll try to stick to my timing so that we can ask questions at the end of the day. So my goal is to do 40 minutes conversation, and we take 10 minutes. You can see 7:10 now. It's 5:10. So why is the conversation of myths and disinformation a very important conversation, even in the context of democracy, even in the context of um, even in the context of democracy, even in the context of politics? Why is it important? It is important because we are in an evolving space where information, which once used to become a one-way thing, it's now becoming heterogeneous. What that means is it's not become pervasive and heterogeneous in a way that one person in their room can share something now on their social media platforms and millions get to see it. I asked a question, I was asking my cousin last week. I said, hey, I see a lot of people liking videos on TikTok or on Instagram. You see millions. I say, are these actually real people? Or, I mean, because I've never really put something online and I see like 100K people like, and I'm like, am I really in the same reality? But it is the fact, right? It is a fact that some radio stations now don't even get 100 listeners, honestly, or 100 calling or 100 reaction. But that tells you the power of social media. Well, if social media is then powerful, then whatever content comes to it is even more powerful. And that is what, there's a theorist that proposed that the medium where a content is being shared is more powerful than the message itself. And then he propounded that the medium now becomes the message. That means that TikTok can become so powerful that it can offer itself as a medium to be shared for powerful information to be shared. That means that without even TikTok itself, people can share that kind of powerful information. And it's up to us to not think, right? If it was in the era of television, it's easy for someone to lie on television and people say, hey, you lied yesterday on television. We know you lie a lot on interviews. Um, or is to point fingers at we know people that have used television to lie. It's easy for us to point them out. We know people that have lied on radio. It's easy to point them out. We know people that have misquoted others on newspapers. But on social media, the trend is so powerful that sometimes it's even hard to take track of who is doing what. And that is why the issue of media and information literacy, down to the ability to be able to understand mis and disinformation and how to identify it, becomes most important. In fact, even most importantly so for politically and democratically minded people like fellows like you on this call, which is um, the next thing that I want to talk about, which now leads us to the core conversation of, hey, if there is this conversation, then what is even mis and disinformation and malinformation? And this is where I shift the mic to you. I want to hear from three people. I will take the first three people that raise their hands. Um, um, what is mis and disinformation? Because I'm going to take back so you don't see mine. But I want to hear from your perspective. If they say misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, please, Oduak,
Okay.
allow me
Obong,
to call you
yes, I'll
Okon.
ask you to unmute. Okay.
All right, good. So let me hear you.
Hello, everyone. Misinformation, from what I've learned, is an unintentional dissemination or sharing of information that is false. While this information, the difference lies is that there is an intent, a deliberate intent to share false information.
Oh, that is a beautiful definition. I would, because you were so bold enough to answer this, I would have loved that you attempted malinformation. I mean, no, there's no right or wrong in this case, honestly. You want to go, Obong? You want to give it a shot?
Are you there?
It seems like her hand has come down.
All right.
Udra, do you want to? Okay, so I see Zainab's hand up. Can I
Please go
call
ahead. Go
Zainab?
ahead. Yes, please,
Okay.
please. Let's hear them out. Yeah.
Go
Okay,
ahead,
sir.
Zainab.
Malinformation, I want to try and use it from the malnutrition perspective. I would
Yeah.
say malinformation is giving incomplete information.
Hmm. Incomplete.
So,
Do you
yes,
want to be
that's what
bold
I
enough to
think.
even? I like that. I like the word incomplete. I.
Okay, so I feel like it's giving information halfway.
Hmm.
Maybe you're not giving it completely. So in such a way that some information might actually be hidden, and then it might come out as a problem.
Brilliant. This. I mean, I've had
Thank
people define malinformation so many times. I never had them use the word incomplete. And whilst you are speaking, I remember an instance when I was growing up, an uncle in my street sent me, when I was a very young boy, sent me to go and buy cigarettes. And that time they put it in white nylon. So while I bought the cigarette, I was just turning and I met my Sunday school teacher. And she just looked at me and gave me a menacing look and just left, you know. And the next day when I went to church, everybody was looking at me like, wow, this guy is smoking. He's too young to smoke. Em- when you look at malinformation and how you see that the information there that she was able to extract was incomplete, right? Because there was a missing context. And then also my personality, as a then church boy, is put at risk. So that is why I really agree with the word I use incomplete here, because malinformation lacks context. It may be true or half truth, but you see that there is lack context. It doesn't have a good context. And usually people put it out to malign or decimate someone's personality. I do agree with you. And Ocon was so good, Opong was so good, that she uses the word intentional and unintentional. And I do believe that when you're defining myth and disinformation before even malinformation, which Zainab beautifully so defined, it is very important to be able to say, hey, in while misinformation is unintentional, um, disinformation is intentional. And I don't know if someone wants to give me an example that you have experienced, whether it's misinformation, whether it's disinformation. Trust me, I have lots of examples. I have taken salt and water during this thing. I have eaten a lot of ewedu that it claims it cures COVID-19. I have done all that. So, do you have an example that you want to share with us um, that sort of represents that? First person to raise their hand, I would really appreciate that. We
Okay.
have two participants. Yeah, please
Okay.
go ahead.
Mustafa, I would ask you to unmute, and then Tosin. Okay. I think maybe Mustafa.
Hello,
Okay.
good evening.
Good
Good
evening,
evening,
sir.
Mustafa.
Yes, malinformation or misinformation has to do with the distortion of the content of the message intended to send to the receiver. In the
Mm-hmm.
process, the actual content of the message may be altered or halfway sent to the recipient of the information, while affecting the entire aims of the message as intended to
Hmm.
send to the receiver.
And
Thank you.
that is what mis or disinformation. Okay, okay, let's take the next person.
Okay. Tosin, I've asked you to unmute.
Okay, good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. You were
Yeah.
asking for an example of for whether misinformation or disinformation. I think mine is will be disinformation, and it didn't
Okay.
really happen to me. It happened to my mom. So my mom a while ago had an accident and left a bit of scar, and she was while she was looking for remedy, she was trying to find a remedy to take off those scars. I don't
Yeah.
know how she found one on I think on Facebook. I just
Yeah.
discovered that I was not. I didn't even know what she was rubbing on those cars. One day I just saw the part where this car was. I saw that the place was extremely dark. And I called my dad's attention to it. I said, look at your wife. She's doing this rather than this thing getting better. It's not looking fantastical. So I had to call her attention. Were you given a drug at the hospital? What are you using? She now saying, I saw something on Facebook. They said we should mix this and this together. I said, and you went ahead to do it. I think you should stop immediately. I said, you went ahead to follow Facebook and Facebook doctors. You should just quit this now. So I think what they do is that I think for me, what I've observed is that they take advantage of people's vulnerability, especially for those that disinform when it comes to healthcare. They take advantage of people's disability because when you check online, you just find people are looking for remedies for one disease or the other. Look, cite an example of somebody battling
Yeah.
diabetics, and we know the cost of insulin is not smiling at anyone now. You will not
Yeah.
find somebody online, maybe on Facebook or on TikTok, telling you that there's something I can give you uh, to cure diabetics.
Yeah.
All right,
Oh, wow.
thank you, Tosin. Would you want to take one more, Silas?
Yeah. I think, yeah. I want to take, who spoke last? Was it Tosin?
Yes, it was Tosin.
Okay, good. Yeah, the one last person. So we move forward.
Okay, Daniel.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I have a very personal example experience. Many years ago, when I was in primary six, I'm talking on malinformation. When I
Yeah.
was in primary six, we had a death in my family. We lost my grandmom. So my parents traveled, and somehow it was towards the end of the school year. So the school was aware that there was a death in my family. And somehow I stopped going to school for about a month, close to a month. It was that funny. And a friend of mine in school took the information out of context, went to school, and announced to school after they hadn't seen me for a few days that it was me that died. So I had died.
Jesus.
They mourned for me, and everything was settled. So the day my mom appeared at home, of course, the following day I had to take off to school. And sorry, the same morning I had to run away to school. And when I appeared in school,
Oh, God.
everybody ran away. They thought they'd seen a ghost, that my ghost came for vengeance. So that's my personal example of malinformation. The context was distorted. The facts were there, but it was the context. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I am certain that there were kids in your school that till today are traumatized by this. They would always recount and say, I saw a ghost in real life. Yeah, I mean, I see Otta once. I mean, I wanted. Let me hear Otta quickly. Otta Nelson.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Now,
let's hear
since
him quickly.
okay, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, good evening, all.
Good evening.
All right. I will be giving an example of misinformation, and this happened when I wanted to travel to Port Harcourt, and when I got to the park, it was not going well, so I was directed to go by the side where I went, and I told them that I will be dropping at Park B, and they told me yes, that I should get into the transport, that they would drop me at Park B. So I hopped in and they got passengers and we left and they dropped me at Park A, which is very, very much far from Park B. And I discovered that they did that just to get passenger. They just misled me. They just had to give me the false information and I have to incur extra expenses. I nearly fell into the wrong hands because I was not familiar with the place I was going to. So I feel that was a misinformation and I was very sad on that fateful day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nelson. Whether it was Tosin sharing the wonderful story of his lovely mom, and how she was misled with false medication that could have harmed her health, or whether it was Daniel, suffering the impact of malinformation, where allegedly he was dead, but then he was resurrected, possibly. whether it was the story, of course, of Nelson misled from pack supposed pack B to A. One thing that we see in this story is that there is some impact to the victims in the story. And you would see that whether it is mal, dis, or mis, or information, whichever type it is, something takes out of the victim. There is some punishment to it, there is some discipline to it. But one important thing about the stories that we have shared is that it's not even just singularly about the boldness to share them. It is also about the realization that I have fallen a victim to this, or I know someone that has fallen a victim to this. And if you ask me as a person, I would say that that is the first step to even identifying myth and disinformation, to be able to say, I was a victim of this, and this is how I was able to spot it. You know, it makes more sense. But then, I mean, Zainab was the first to give us Obong rather, give us an, a definition that has this intentional and unintentional. And Zainab also helped us to understand that malinformation usually lacks a context, which Daniel gave us a very beautiful example to understand how he was duped to be dead. And uh, in whatever case it is, I want you to start looking at it away even from personal experiences and look at from that singular experience to more generic experience. Think about how many mothers who are on Facebook have been misled to take that. Some mothers will not be so lucky to have a son like Tosin to say, "Hey, stop taking this." Some might be so unfortunate, and when you look at it, you see that the impact of that is so broad. Like, hey, imagine if Daniel was a presidential candidate and there is that rumor that he's dead. Imagine how it will impact on the quality and output of the elections, right? eh, that would have been a whole lot of different stories that we're dealing. Imagine if Nelson was a whole congregation of people who went out to vote but were misled about the location. When we think about how these three categories of misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation are contributing, it becomes pertinent and important for us to begin to say, hey, then we need the skill to spot them. We need the skill to understand them. And this now leads me to my next conversation, which is to say, you know, why is it then important to? We've talked about the importance, but even away from that, an important thing is to be able so that we can preserve our democracy. Preserve our democracy. And I give you a good example. Um, there is this massive desire for militarization of governments in the Sahel region. I mean, the Sahel, most sub-Saharan countries now are tilting towards, taking a cue from Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. That is worrying. It is worrying because now, especially in the Burkina Faso context, where Ibrahim Traore is being used as the voice of African Pan-Africanism. But Pan-Africanism, in its sense, came from the idea of freedom. Most of Pan-Africanists who started the Pan-African were not military officers. Were not authoritarians. They were simply, whether it's Nnamdi Ezekwe, whether it's Kwame Nkrumah, they were Democrats who believed in the idea of voting. But then you could see how this idea of Pan-Africanism is being skewed to portray some sort of military takeover in the region. You will see videos of Ibrahim Traore even posed as AI, sharing money to people. I know someone who I'm talking to currently who sold his land as Nigerian and moved to Burkina Faso, thinking it is going to be, a land of milk and honey based on what we're seeing on social media. But the story was different, right? And so if these kinds of misinformation that threatens the quality of democracy is being filled in the social media space without us being able to identify them, it has an impact on our democracy because young people now will begin to demand for that kind of government. And then another thing is that it promotes informed decision making. I mean, if Tosin's lovely mother was able to identify that, hey, this cure, I need to ask Tosin, or I need to ask my husband, I need to ask a doctor, it would have been very difficult for her to even take up and start using that medication, right? Because if she knew, then she would have done better informed decision. I mean, for example, if Nelson he was very familiar with the transport system in that region. He would know that, hey, this doesn't look like Pack A. It doesn't look like Pack B. Rather, it looks like Pack A. Which you see, it is because sometimes people make the wrong decision because they don't know, because they are not well informed. Yeah, Rotimi, you want to say something quickly? Please go ahead. Let Rotimi speak.
I've asked you to unmute, Rotimi.
Yes,
You
I've
can
done that.
unmute.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, good
Yes,
evening.
sir. Can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly,
Good
Rotimi.
evening, sir.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your good start of the lecture. Yes, I am confused a little bit. I don't know which of it is about this our democracy. Because when these founding fathers of this new democracy that started in 1999 started, they gave us the impression that democracy is the ultimate that will take away all of our sufferings and our demands for good governance. But right now, it seems to be worse than the military that I experienced. So in comparison to the two, I feel this democracy is worse than military. So what they did then, should we call it mis, dis, or malinformation? Thank you, sir.
Well, very brilliant. When I have conversations like this, I like people to talk about things like this. Why? Um, what they did there, it's okay. Now scholars are beginning to talk about exaggerated disinformation. Exaggerated disinformation goes beyond disinformation because disinformation is usually not long term. For example, like how the conversation of Nelson, you see that their intention was to get more passengers in that park, right? They have a short-term goal, but in a long-term goal, which is what we are seeing in the democratic sphere, where politicians make long-term promises, it is what now in the field of information disorder we are tilting to call it exaggerated disinformation, because they say these things with so much boldness that you know, people begin to lick their tongues and say, "Hey, um, this is gonna be," and then we're gonna, and then when it doesn't happen, it gives gaps to the standards of democracy. And when this conversation comes, I usually tell people, I say, do not hate. They say, do not hate the game, but hate the player. This time around, hate the player, but don't hate the game, because the standards of democracy are quite clearly out there, brazen. It is sometimes the personalities that are managing it. Democracy itself is built on principles. And if you find leaders who don't respect those principles, then however the quality and standard of the principles is, it can't work. And that is why in some democracies that have been able to live up to that expectations, maybe a bit of it, we see how it is. But democracy, like any other form of government, is not perfect, right? It is not perfect. And worst of all, in the diversity of kind of communities that we have. So yes, all this kind of based back to your question, what they did is what I will categorize as an exaggerated disinformation, because in my mind, they know that maybe this cannot happen. Or maybe they are just hopeful. But whether it's hopeful, whether it's complete awareness, you will see that uh, um, uh, they don't have any clarity as to how that can happen, as to how that will turn out to be. And I think that that is one gap that in democracy that most people who attack it use, because it's so factual. But then also weakens the more benefits of democracy that we have enjoyed in the past. And I can outline a long list of them. Um, uh, Freedom of speech is one of it, even though people still say it's not that. But there's a lot of it. And one factor I always give people, I say, hey, do you know that all the military governments that we've had in Western Africa from 1960 up to this point, there was no single woman in the cabinet, whether it is governor, whether it is in the high military. We don't have. Imagine a long year of no female representation in leadership. What that impacts on our young women is not having exemplary women to look up to. And just when democracy is beginning to give these opportunities, um, we have other bad examples for young women to follow, and in that. But also, democracy offers that diversity in leadership, that open voices in leadership where you don't find. But also, does he have gaps? Absolutely, a lot of gaps. Is he open to mis and disinformation? Absolutely. Have politicians used mis and disinformation to get opportunity? Definitely, yes, Rotimi. And thank you for that question. I think it's something for both of us to ponder which one is good for us. Um, Let me proceed because I see that we are. If we talk about the importance, which of course, Rotimi also raised an example of how that can be a consequence for not being able to, you know, and this is my argument in this case. What are the consequences of mis and disinformation? We are not able to spot them. One of them, misleading beliefs and confusion among individuals. Now, as Rotimi gave us that example, that is why campaign is very important. That is why we can be able to read between the lines who is misinforming us, who is disinforming us to gain our votes. And that is why it's important that if we don't do that, we suffer the consequences of bad governance. We suffer the consequences of corruption. We suffer the consequences of everything that a good government is supposed to bring to us. Another thing, the damage to reputation and credibility. Damage our credibility. I mean, I can bet that when Daniel went back to school, he had to convince a lot of people to say, "Hey, I'm not dead. Look at me. So you cannot just touch me. I'm still alive." And maybe someone that left that school would have never believed that. Maybe still now, if you ask them, they will say, "I do not think, you know, um, Daniel is still Daniel." Another thing is social and political polarization. Now look at it. Back to good example as Rotimi raised. Politicians have used um, polarizing statements big so that to get an edge to win either elections or win votes. And like I say, especially around ethnicity and religion, we've seen a lot of that over the years, that can trigger division amongst people. This is a consequence of mis and disinformation, especially in a political democratic spaces. Another thing is a potential harm to public health and safety. I mean, I give this story all the time that in 2013, when I was in school, um, in campus back in ABU, I took salt and water for like 4 days. Why? Because I don't want to die. I felt that taking it will save me. Ambassador Stanley, the two people, go ahead. I like listening to people talk. Give me a different
All right.
diversity.
Okay.
Yeah, let him talk.
I've asked you to unmute, Ambassador.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much like you said, I also like very interactive sessions where your facilitator also engages you. Okay, so sir, my background is communication, and I'm a bit curious about, and rather I'd like to hear your view about the rate at which misinformation, disinformation, is spread across various platforms, especially on social media, and how concerned are you about the effect on the unity? And with all respect, this is a unity we are patching. There's no need of using words around it. The unity, we are patching it. So how concerned are you about how this disinformation and misinformation on social media, the impact of it on our unity? And side by side also, they talk about freedom of speech and allowing people to speak freely. Of course, where your right begins or stops is where mine begins. But side by side that with regulating social media. So based on what we are seeing on social media, based on the effect it might have on our unity, what's your take on that, and why or not we should also regulate social media, and how, if you're in that school of thoughts? Thank you.
This is a very important question, Ambassador Chukwemeka, and for obvious reasons why. If we have acknowledged that social media platform has become a brewing space for harmful messaging, then your question is now saying, why are we not looking at regulation? And if we have to look at regulation, how mindful should we be about its impact on the freedom of speech. And then
Brilliant,
this is what
brilliant,
I
sir.
have. Yes, and this is my perspective on this, and to be very open about it. Um, I have gone to the House of Reps Human Rights Committee. I've met with them like 3 times on different and one of the things they keep proposing is regulation, social media regulation, social media. Each time one gone. I work in the civil media space. I'm a journalist. I don't like regulation, especially social media regulation, because I feel that young people are finally beginning to find their voices. Of course, with the negativity that comes with it, young people are beginning to make money online. Content creation is offering over millions, over 1 million Nigerians are depending on content creation to earn money and live a better life. In fact, it's a whole entrepreneurial space, right? But then you ask me, if I'm not for regulation, what am I proposing, right? One of the problems that we are facing is that you can't say you want to cut. Imagine there's a mango tree in a village where everybody plucks good mango, and then you know, and then somebody says there's a snake in it. Of course, there's a snake. People have seen it. Maybe you kill 1 or 2 people, and someone say, "Oh, let's cut the tree down," right? This is the approach that the government is looking at. But what we are proposing is, hey, let us not regulate, because if you say you want to regulate, how do you define what is what? And who do you charge what is what? Because we've seen how these kind of laws are made, and those at the top don't suffer the consequences. But then what is the solution? Mis and disinformation, like any other crime in Nigeria, should have is more easier to have a clear punishment, not regulation now. Leave the social media. It's very important to have a clear outline punishment as to what would happen to who when you share these kinds of mis or disinformation. Imagine we say there is a clear punishment during election when someone share false election result. You will either pay 300,000 or you will serve 6 months in prison. If we have this kind of clear cut, like spreading is spraying money during, there's a clear punishment now that I think people are government has. We need to put that clearly for 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 mis and disinformation violation. But why is that problem for the government? It's a problem to the government because those in power do not want to be pointed at with these kinds of punishment. Why? Because they use mis and disinformation in many instances also to promote their politics or to promote their government. We've seen it a lot number of times. And power is transient, as we know. They don't want to make clear punishments for violation, and then tomorrow they are not in power, and then it applies to them or applies to their children. So that is the problem. A problem is not to regulate the social media, which we don't think is right, but rather to to make clear rules that when you share something like this is what would be the punishment. And that is where what we are pushing. Say, let there be clear punishments, not regulation. Because with regulation comes witch hunting. People can use social to witch hunt people and say people can be disgruntled with a politician can be disgruntled with Facebook because he's banned, and then you see he's banned. So this is my response to this, that we can I am not for regulation because people should have their voices, but I think that is why we are having this conversation. I am for clear punishment as to if you share mis and disinformation. I am for media and information literacy. People should know how to identify mis and disinformation. I am also on the side of educating the people to know the right ways to use social media, because we will learn. And if a society is regulating the means of future evolution, then we are already killing our own innovations to reach the future well enough. Social media offers just more than regulation. It offers a lot as to even learning. I know a lot of people learning on social media. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead, Ambassador Chukwemeka. Let's have him speak and we'll proceed so that we don't see a lot of hands up.
All right.
So I think it's important I give you this feedback. That's
Yeah.
why I raised my hand a second time. If for me, if there's no takeaway from this lecture, the mango tree analogy is for me is excellent, it's brilliant, and I really want to thank you. I can't forget it. So let's not cut down the mango tree. Let's I mean, if need be, we might cut off one or two branches, but don't cut down the mango tree because it benefits the whole community. For me, it's very apt. I just wanted to give that quick feedback, and thank you very much for that. It's a big takeaway for me.
Oh, that's good. Good to hear that from you, Ambassador Chukwemeka. Well, let's quickly proceed so that I don't want to keep you here. Saturday, I know Saturdays are important for folks to do a lot of things. Yes, and the next thing that I wanted to talk about is that before we even say, before we need to understand also one thing that makes people share mis and disinformation is their confirmation bias. Someone asked me, say, can I be a professor and share mis and I say, yes, you would be. You can be. You still can't share. Why? Because of confirmation bias. People want to share something that aligns with their belief, even if it is not true. If someone likes a particular political candidate, if the person is speaking anything, they are not likely to even look at in between the lines. Rather, they would rather focus on because they align with that. You could literally be in a mosque or a church and someone is saying something you know is wrong, but because you align with that religion, you believe what the person is saying. And that is one problem that makes disinformation. Spotting it becomes really very difficult, right? You can just attach something that benefits some section of society and attach a lie to it, and people are willing to accept because it somehow aligns with their belief or even core doctrines. That's one problem. And I always want to give example with this, that how we see things is not the same. It's not the same. And I usually want to give the analogy at the point of this presentation. And honestly, I want to hear from two people. Honestly, I will be strict on this now. Two people, so that I don't keep you. Paul, do you want to? What do you see in this? What can you see on this picture? And if Paul speaks, if you don't agree with what Paul sees, then you tell me what you see. Maybe Mobalaji can give me another perspective. But let's take Paul.
Paul, I've asked you to.
Good evening. Okay, good evening, sir.
Good evening,
Thank
Paul.
you very much for the insightful lectures thus far. Yes, I want to hit directly on that confirmation, but I want to give an analogy. Prior to the 2015 election, there was a lot of propaganda confirming concerning the Jonathan regime. A lot of things were said. Even the removal of subsidy was countered by even the current president. It's a fact. And so many other propaganda that were biased, and a lot of this misinformed the pattern of voting that eventually led to the defeat of Jonathan, that he also accepted a defeat. So I want to say, what are we really going to do to curtail this trend of this misinformation or disinformation? Already the 2027 election around the corner, they have come again. Politicians with their gimmick and misinformation and disinformation. So I don't know what we're going to do to curtail it so that people don't, because a lot of this belief along ethnic, religious, and the political sentiments that tip people towards even voting. So I don't know, sir, how we're going to do so that we'll be objective and we'll be balanced in our decision making. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Paul, for this wonderful comment. Honestly, if you ask me, there's a lot to do. And you raising that at this juncture of this conversation, and look at you guys, look at all the folks on this call, brilliant minds on this call on a Saturday evening that you could be anywhere, but you're here. This is one thing that we're doing now. This is one thing the Electoral College is doing to bring people passionate about politics, passionate about democracy, passionate about governance to talk about these critical issues. Why? Because you are critical members of the society that can engage in good conversation to enlighten people around you as to these kinds of problems that we are seeing. So this is not even a training session. It's just a reawakening conversation to say, hey, this is one thing that we're even doing to say when election comes, I mean, who knows? One person here can just be a voice on social media speaking about confirmation bias and how it is impacting on our decision to vote. You yourself gave a good example of how that has happened, changing an entire electoral decision and weighing down on one candidate's opportunity to get re-elected. That means it's a serious problem. Um, but here there is a whole lot of approach that we're looking at, which MIL is one of it, and this is one of it we're doing here. There is another AI document on countering disinformation during election we're working on. There is also the National Fact-Checking Coalition that we're trying to strengthen to combat that. We've been working closely with INEC to do that. But if you ask me, which one I see very viable in all these plans, is just this MIL, honestly, just having conversation with like-minded, with brilliant minds, critical in their society, who can be able to inform families, who can be able to inform friends. And once we have these growing kinds of numbers, it is easy to make closer impact than not. Yeah. So, but trust me, there's a lot of plans to look at it holistically. Even social media platforms have been coming for a lot of meetings to look at the 2027 elections. 2027 election is not even 18 months away, honestly. It's not 18 months away, it's just close by. And mis and disinformation around politics starts even 9 months before an election because campaign starts earlier. Rumors about who is going to be candidate or who not starts earlier. So yes, Paul, that is my rendition on that. But it's a very good question for all of us on this call to think about and to ponder on and see what we can come up with. Yeah, thank you. I see somebody, Mabolaji, uh, from the PDP.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening, Mabo.
So you asked what I could see from the image that
Yes,
you showed. Yes, I just wanted to answer that. Can I
yes.
say the two things I see, or do I only say one?
You can say both, honestly.
Okay, so the first image I see is of a woman. She has a fur coat, a feather in her hair. She's like her side profile. She's facing away from the picture. And then I also see an old man.
Oh, wow, an old man.
Yes, I do.
Oh, interesting. I've never had that one before. I mean, it just confirms. But then let me hear good points you've raised and all valid, Mabolaji. Ferrami, do you want to say something? What do you see? And then we move on.
All right. Good evening. So I see a picture of a woman and I've kind of seen a picture of a mountain.
Oh, mountain.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for being bold enough to say your mind. Actually, there's no wrong or bad answer when it comes to this picture, and I'll tell you why. Why? Because it explains what I was talking about initially. Confirmation bias is an inherent human behavior. And when Paul asked that question about how do we deal with that, there's no really way of dealing with that rather than to be more aware that you are capable of being biased, right? It's an inherent. And even when you look at this picture, like Mobology said, I've never really looked at the picture and see an old man. I see an old woman, honestly, but hardly have I seen an old man. I've met someone who says he see an apple tree, you know. I met someone who say he has seen a beach, people swimming, had a lot of that. And like you said, Farami, also you now have another unique perspective that I haven't, but it also explains how we see things differently as human beings, how that can even impact on how we consume information. And you can see it right now happening here. And I've seen people really arguing that what you're seeing is not there. You're lying. People challenge each other in many instances. And it brings me to the next slide because I need to start rounding up now. Um, Are we guilty? I am guilty of confirmation bias. When election comes, I need to vote someone. That is itself, it's a reality that human beings we have to make our options and choices, which sometimes can make us so biased in what we're doing. But this is a reality. But what this does to us is that we don't seek out when we are biased, we don't seek out objective facts, and we interpret information even differently. We even forget details that we should remember, and we ignore even information that we should consume. And don't think about it just for yourself. Think about for your entire family. Think about it your friends. Like the good example Tosin gave us here, maybe when mommy saw that post on Facebook, maybe she saw it maybe in the church group or maybe a friend or something, someone that she really believes in posting it. And then she just believes, hey, that can go. These are all examples of confirmation bias and how it makes us limited to be able to dissect intricate information that could be of help to us. And key steps, let me just rush through. Key steps to spotting is that one, please verify the source. Why is it important to verify the source? Check the credibility and reputation of the source. For example, if someone told me when I had the rumors that former President Buhari, that I saw it, so I had to go and check the credible media houses that I feel they are more credible to confirm. And when I said, all right, that's true. At some point, I have to even make some calls to call people in Katsina who I know. And yeah, you know, because sometimes you have to also look at the bias and signs and the hidden agendas in some of this reportage. I mean, some people point out to certain media houses in Nigeria and say they are supporting this or they're supporting that. So you see, knowing the source of the information and where it is coming is very important. Um, I mean, look at, for example, Tosin was able to pick out and say, "You got this information from Facebook. Sorry, this is not true." Just by that, because Facebook shouldn't be a source of health information that can be detrimental to one. In 2023, there was a claim that the Chinese government has seized 7,200 human penises, male genitalia, in coming from Nigeria to China. And that was so crucial because the House of Reps even started discussing about how to counter that. How do we put laws that stop, male gender mutilation? I wish they did that for women. Because now it affects majority. They are more concerned. That was on a lighter note. But I remember calling the person who moved this what they call it that their term in the parliament, the motion, and he told me that it's true. He saw it on the news. And when I went, I saw the news website, he saw it. It was a satire website, a kind of website that people post funny things, right? So we need to check the source before we bring out the information and share. Another thing is examine the content. I know that if Dawson had the opportunity to read where mommy got that information, maybe he would have noticed the tone and language. He would have noticed maybe the logical inconsistency in that. You would have even noticed if it's in a video, maybe you would notice how sharply the video was made, and you can draw a conclusion and say this source cannot give this kind of information that can cause people to harm themselves. Another example that we've seen here is someone shared this. When you look at this picture, someone said that that then late former President Buhari was going to attack Russia if they don't leave Ukraine, and could think about it like that and say, wow. But then when you look at this picture, you don't see whether it's from CNN, whether it's from BBC, you just don't see it. And then when you check, you saw that there was a tool where people create this kind of images and make it look so real. And why? Maybe if I'm sympathetic to Ukraine, I wouldn't even dare to check. I would say, finally, Buhari is going to do something. But we need to examine the content and ask the right questions. Another way of how to spot is to evaluate supporting evidence. If someone say I need to take salt and water, why do I need to do that? Why do I need to do that? Who said so? Is this citing a doctor? Is this citing a research? Why? Who is saying it? Because sometimes people can cherry pick data, pick half truth, half lies, and marry it together and form a new narrative. But with our logical sense, we can be able to evaluate supporting evidence and counter it. And that is why this lecture is not just for us. Conversation is not just for people around us. Give an example that happened to me. Someone say, if you take Ewedu soup constantly, you wouldn't get COVID-19. I I have a bias for Ewedu because I like it, right? And even though I was a fact checker, then I tried it in secret. I was just eating it in secrecy. Did it cure COVID? I got COVID that time and it didn't cure it, right? But I know a lot of people who also took Ewedu that time, hoping that it's not harmful, it's just Ewedu. Let me just try it, right? But this is why we need to examine what is the connection between Ewedu and, if Ewedu has some minty taste, maybe I would say perhaps, yeah. Another thing in how to do that is to consider the context. We have to consider the context. We have to consider the context sometimes the context is just a lie. The people paint the context to be untrue. I mean, cite the example of Daniel. They changed the context from the lost he had, and then made him the key figure in in the occurrence. And so, how do we do that? Usually, when I see an information, I ask is five W's and H. Who said what? Who said what? So, what, who, where, the H is for how, and then why. I ask these questions to just if I see if I can find the answers. And then I saw this when Nnamdi Azikiwe was arrested. Someone said that, oh, Nnamdi Azikiwe is arrested because this woman, he was caught with a woman in Kenya, but you could see it was his face that was used and plastered here. And so you could see he's not the one, and it doesn't. But by just asking these questions, I was able to find out that the website that was shared this information it's not just a reliable one. A lot of people have complained about it. This one was another thing that we need to do is also to pay attention to emotional language, context. People take advantage of context, even spelling and grammar. And I give you an example. When Hilda Bassi did a cooking competition, people came out. She didn't get a certificate, I think, until after like 6 months. And in that, almost in the week where she finished, someone shared this and say Hilda Bassi just taking a certificate. Until then, she had to come out and say, "Hey, I haven't. In fact, I'm trying to get it." But you could see the original one here and see how it was edited. It's a problem. We need to pay attention. If you can spot it, then you can verify it. I always tell people, I say, if you can be able to spot something fishy, then you can. And how do you do it? I would summarize, say, check the credibility. Who posted it? What website is it? Cross-reference. Am I seeing this information anywhere else? You can even check some fact-checking websites. You can investigate images. Look at them, zoom them. You know, um, and we need to educate ourselves, mostly also people around us, and we need to take responsibility and take responsibility of the kind of information that you know that we share. And then it is not the end, but it is the end of this class, but not the end, because spotting myths and disinformation is crucial in today's world. It is our responsibility, and uh, I would like to, if and I know I've taken a lot of time, but thank you for listening. I want to show you quickly something. I don't know if you can see can you see my website?
It
Can you
hasn't
see
come up
my,
yet, but we can see your screen, sir.
okay, I wanted to show you because people ask me about the tools all the time. I don't know, can you see this?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Now people have been asking me, say, hey, Silas, how can we locate tools for verifying? Just come to this website we've launched. You can have all the resources here for all the technical tools you need, whether it's to analyze images, look at it here, all the technical tools you need, whether you want to find people, you want to understand websites. Uh, just for example, this is photo analysis tools. There's a lot of, if you want to do image, just visit and then upload your this thing, and then whether you want to do website analysis, these are the tools, compile them here. You can always visit to find tools to do your verification. Thank
Sorry,
you,
so what's the
guys.
name of the website?
It is Didac. Look at it.
Okay.
Didac at the CGID. Didac.cgid. I don't know if you can see it. Let me highlight
Okay,
it
yes.
for you.
Okay.
When you do that, you just come OSINT resources. There is materials, presentations on how you can do them. If you're confused, there are guides and read handbook, verification handbook. Each time I do this, people ask me, so that's why I say I think this time around,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
So
it's a good resource. Thank you,
yes,
sir.
we have a
So you can
resource here.
help at least the number of individuals here to always fact check information resources that they get on social media.
Absolutely. I will be glad to hear feedback in the future. Yeah. We
Okay,
have
good.
AI, yeah, all of that. Just go knock out yourself there. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Otta Nelson has helped drop didac.thecgid.org. It's on the group chat, so you can pick that from there. We will take questions now. We can have our hands raised, but before we take that, I think there was one question cited in the chat box. And I'll just read it quickly. I think the person basically asked that one of the major challenges to of misinformation in Nigeria is the fact that citizens usually misunderstand their personal sentiments and opinions on issues with facts. So on the one hand, they have their sentiments, they have their opinions, and on the other hand, there are facts. And so most times, uh, individuals portray their personal sentiments and argue with all of it on social media. So what's your take? What can a developing country like Nigeria do to control this pandemic, as he calls it?
Thank you so much, Mr. Enoch. I think that was a very brilliant question. And I have to also side with you on this fact that, yes, I mean, it is a pandemic as it is. You know why? Because when people share their opinion and stand on it as if it's the fact, then it's problem. What if everyone stands on their opinion? That means there will be chaos, right? And it is a problem. And that is why I say regulation cannot be the problem of bad information on our social media spaces. And this is the reason why you've explained it well, because it is a personal thing. It is a pressing thing. That is why MIL, in this kind of conversation that we're having, we need to do it more. We need to let people know that there is a difference between what is factual and there is a difference between what is opinion and there is a difference between bias. If me, I am aware of my biases. In fact, if I am arguing somewhere and I know it's coming from a bias, I go back and I laugh and say, hey, Yusuf, you're biased. But we need to remind people, we need to be conducting these kinds of conversation, whether it is as a teacher, whether with your colleagues. We need to let people know. In fact, I think we have a partnership with NOA where we're trying to train a lot of people and then do a lot of style messaging to just let people know about these biases, this thing that you're talking about, so that people can make informed decisions. People are not even aware that their biases makes them think that way, and that is why it circulates. Somebody supports Peter Obi and they just put something. He doesn't even check. He just reshares. Somebody supports Tinubu. They shut, but like. So I agree with you, but one thing that I will capitalize here and say, we need to create more awareness. We need to speak to people more. We need media and information literacy more, and it needs to go all round. But thank you very much, Enoch, for this wonderful question. Yeah, that's my take on this.
All right, thank you. So I'll take Udwakobong and Mobalaji after. There are the two hands I see raised. Udwak, I've asked you to unmute, please. Okay, if that's not happening, let me quickly go to Udwak. Are you ready?
Hello, can you hear me? Yes.
I can hear you. Okay.
Okay. My question is coming from there's a recent let's say information a deep fake was created of a congresswoman Alexandra and in the deep fake, it was platforms like Meta Mark has show it as fake. And despite this video labeled AI,
Yeah,
a journalist still circulated and made a comment. And when it was pointed out to him that this is deep fake, and said, oh, but this sounds like this particular person. So I'm coming from an angle where you talked about confirmation bias. So when you mentioned that you're not really about regulation, but more like punishment. So I'm looking at, are you talking about street liability where as long as someone disseminates or shares false information, that person should be punished for it? What about the situation where we know that as Nigerians, we are stubborn and there's no way someone is going to agree that we have biases? And even when we've also done studies that most of this disinformation has caused women not to involve themselves in political atmospheres like this. And it's something that is still being glazed over. So how does someone work that even when something is labeled as fake, they are still pushing it through? And this is from a reliable source. I mean, this is from someone that is supposed to know better, an educated person, and this is a developed country. And now we have Nigeria, a developing country in all these aspects. How do we work this wrong?
Well, thank you so much, Oduabang, for this very important question. And I'll tell you something. You were the one that defined intentional and unintentional in the beginning of this class. And one of the things that really caught my attention with that definition is that you said while misinformation is unintentional, disinformation is intentional. Now, when we have a conversation with the parliament and say, hey, someone asks me the same question and say, how do we go about it? I say it's the same way where we have placed some laws that if you steal, of course, the person that steals a goat and then the person that robs a bank, their punishment is different. We need to have this sitting with different members of the society, experts, of course, to be able to say, hey, if it is unintentional, because as a fact checker, we look at three things. Is this intentional or unintentional? When we even want to verify how how much impact does it have on the society? And then last one, how much impact does it have on the individual in the society? So, for example, if someone shares a misinformation that doesn't have health issue, that cannot cause chaos to the society, then you will see that such kinds of laws that outlines this kind of. And when I mean punishment, I just mean the normal ones that we see in Nigeria. I'm not a lawyer, but I know that there are punishments uh, that the law court has, all kinds of court has, if we do some kind of crime. In a way, I want us to find a way to sort of make mis and disinformation a crime. And how do we do that? We need to clearly define it by intention. We need to clearly define it by impact. And then we need to clearly define it by personal impact. If you are selling, we did a story some time ago where one man was selling drugs, it's Baba Isha, I think, saying the drugs can cure all sorts of things, and it's just 100 naira, and a lot of people were buying it. We took it to the lab and it was just a gory kind of medicine. You see, this is misinformation, disinformation, clearly disinforming people. That can have a long national health impact on a lot of people. Different enough if someone just posts something and say, this is me in a club chilling, but then clearly, he's doctored the video and he's not there. You see, this one it's less harmful. So this has to be, it's a long process of trying to define what is grievous, not just blanket, so that even if a Nigerian is arrested, it will not be a blanket punishment. It could just be 100,000 K fee based on the gravitage of your misinformation and using these three skills. Is it intentional or unintentional? And we can weigh it by your intention. I give you an example, even in this conversation. Nelson, who spoke in the course of this presentation, was able to identify how this was intentional, and how he was being misled intentionally. That is a problem. And fact checkers, when we fact check all these kinds of claims, we're able to track the intention too. Why? If someone sits and doctored a video of the president, it's very intentional because the person sat down and did that. So it's a whole lot of conversation, and it's not as punishment as that, but I'm saying that consequence. We need to make the consequences of sharing mis and disinformation clearly. Last election, someone shared false election results in Lagos, and it was trending on Twitter. I remember then. That can mislead people. That can discourage people from even going out to cast their franchise. So yes, but trust me, Oduakobon, it is an ongoing conversation, and you yourself can be thinking around that. Thank you. Do we have someone? Or we?
Yeah, we had more hands. So I would ask Mobolaji now to unmute.
Good evening again, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So my line of questioning was in the same category as Uduak, and you've already answered some of my questions. So I will just ask how we could balance the need to punish misinformation with the right to free speech, and if there are any alternative approaches to addressing misinformation that might be more effective than punishment.
Oh, thank you so much, Walaji. Good question. Punishment is already a negative term, especially in a civilized society, if democratic one at that. But one of the things, and I will think that folks in the electoral college will agree with me on this one, is massive nationwide MIL on misinformation. There is one line I used to hear, I think it was in a rap song. You say, if you know better, then you will do better. Right. And most people don't even know better. And I'll give you an example with what Oduabang said. She said an AI deepfake. You might be I mean, I know people who are professors who don't know what deepfake is, and it doesn't mean because they don't know book or something. It's just you don't know, right? If you know that, even I mean, I see people on TikTok liking AI videos and commenting. I mean, in the case example we had, it was even a journalist, right? That's tell you that people don't even know. A lot of people don't even know about that reality. And if they don't know, that means that we can be punishing the wrong people, right? And so if you ask me what is the best way, is to be able to inform people. And you will say, is this possible? This thing, it sounds far-fetched. It's not far-fetched. Remember during COVID-19, when Nigeria was very intentional about educating people were informed. Nook and crannies, people were involved. If we say that we're spending some money nationwide to engage people on AI deepfakes and how that can impact on the quality of election output, people will know. Honestly, people will know. And when they go online and they see, they will, I don't. So yeah, the best way to do that, aside punishment, which I will say consequence, is this massive nationwide ML. I think anyway it's trying to do something there. But of course funding is a problem. But yeah, that's what I would say on that. Thank you, Mobalaji.
Okay. Ambassador Stanley, but before we I know that I saw a question. Someone was asking steps that needs to be taken in order to be a fact checker. So maybe you want to speak to that whilst I unmute or ask Ambassador to unmute.
Thank you very much. First is the desire. You have to desire to want to be a fact checker. And the second thing, before I say the last thing, is to read this document. This one. This one. See it here. No. This one. Verification handbook. Fact checkers verification handbook. Read it. But the first is the desire. And when you read this handbook, you master some of these tools. There are lots of tutorials online that you can learn, tools for verifying quality of images. We had example of Oduabang where she mentioned deepfake. There is a tool for deepfake analysis. So you can go online, find deepfake videos and come and test them here. This is for this is for AI. You want to detect all these AI videos. Any one of these, try your hands. And so the first thing is the desire. Second thing is your openness to knowledge, which the materials are here. And then the third thing is you try your hands on the tools. And then the last one, which I will be much of help to you, is now how do you write it and how do you start publishing? How do you write it and how do you start? That's when I come in. If you want a mentor or something, you want to start publishing fact checks officially in news platforms, that's when now you need a mentor. But most of the work starts with the person that is intentional about that. Yeah. In the past class, people have reached out to me either on Twitter or other spaces just to ask more questions. I'm dropping it here just in case you have further interest. This is my Twitter handle. This is the most likely place to see me. Thank you. Let me stop sharing.
Ambassador, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Sir, where and when is propaganda useful or misinformation useful for national development, despite everything we've said against it? And I'm not trying to teleguide this discussion, and I'm thinking of war propaganda, for example. When and where is propaganda helpful for national development?
Thank you very much, Mr. Stanley. Historically, when you look at propaganda, whether it's in the Second World War, how Hitler used it, or even in Rwandan genocide in 1994, massive propaganda was used to convince two tribes to hate each other. Propaganda has been painted as a negative thing, right? I would rather use propaganda than even this misinformation in any way. But then, in what instances does propaganda comes good to us? I'll give you a good example. Um, there are lots of foreign influence that we're experiencing in the polity of Africa now, where there is a massive influence of military government that is being shoved into African democracies. And when you ask a lot of young people now, they'll tell you, I think it's a good time to have a military government. Um, but as good or as bad as democracy is, military rule also is like that, right? Um, if you ask me in what instance, I would say yes. To avoid chaos, to avoid our society going into in a not so returning point, sometimes propaganda is good. And I'll give you an example. I think that ECOWAS, for example, is not doing enough propaganda to promote democracy and counter the encroachment of military government. Um, so in this kind of instances, it is really good to engage propaganda, which is sometimes an exaggeration of facts. But do we need to, is it a good time to promote why in the first place we are doing democracy and why democracy seems to be working or whatever? Yes, it's a good time to. Can propaganda be a viable tool in pushing that narrative? Yes, of course. Do politicians use propaganda also to gain voters' acceptance? Yes. Is this good or bad? That is entirely perceptive to whoever it is. But I agree with you, or even if it's a question you raised, there are instances where propaganda really can serve the government, either to dissuade the public from engaging into chaos or to even evade a public crisis. And also, I mean, this one also is a good instance where I'd say that the military propaganda countering terror in Nigeria are not doing so well to exaggerate their powers and scare Boko Haram, or scare all the attackers. If we have and most countries like Russia, China, you see like they do like a well put together video of the army marching on the road, well gallant. That is a good propaganda, if you ask me. And even someone wants to start doing some trouble, and the person sees that kind of might, you know, that can discourage, and so yeah, I can't think of many instances, but I think that it can be used in some instances for good. That's my take on that.
Right. I saw Joseph Adewale's hand up first, after which I'll take Ibrahim Mustafa.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for the insightful lecture so far. So my question is, I've read somewhere that there's a term called the trial balloon, and I've also seen the effect. And what is the term? It's typically about an organization or government per se. They propose a particular idea, an idea that is floated to gauge public reaction, test opinion, or just generate discussion without necessarily being formal or final proposal. So when they now test run the whole thing and they see people's reaction, they either come with a disclaimer or even support or bring about another policy that they will now throw their whole support on. So what kind of concept do you call that? Is it still falling in line with the concept of misinformation, disinformation in that regard, or some level of manipulation? Is that so?
This question, Joseph, and I know wherever you read that document, it is highly a political one, honestly. And there are lots of documents that speak to political advantage and how people can do that. But and putting it in the context of this conversation, I will say that it is a propaganda. It is propaganda to sell an idea of a possibility of something, and then if it doesn't work, it is changed. One thing with propaganda is that whoever is putting it out can easily deny it. And I give you an example. There were some agents that were using social media platform to support a military takeover in Cote d'Ivoire. And what they did was a coordinated approach to say there is a coup happening in Cote d'Ivoire. I don't know if anybody remember that 3 months ago, I think. And there was a lot of reaction. And this is a good example of the kind of question you ask. And why did these actors did that? These actors were from Burkina Faso, and they wanted to test, can we expand the military coalition in Sahel to Cote d'Ivoire because their election is September? How do Ivorians feel about the upcoming elections? Are Ivorians open to military takeover? You see? But how were they able to reach to that point is through this thing that you have explained. A sort of a litmus test kind of propaganda. And propaganda is part of disinformation. Propaganda is part of disinformation. It's just a sort of an exaggeration of facts to be able to skew it to some kind of narrative. That's why we don't even classify it as a disinformation, misinformation, or malinformation, because there is some truth to it. So yeah. It is propaganda, and it is not good in itself, especially when it is tilted towards danger. Like in this case, I gave you with Ivory Coast. But trust me, there are lots of instances of that happening, even in political parties trying to gain an edge during elections. They do a lot of that in a good way, honestly. So to weigh how much money they will put in such region or how much money they should put in that state, which I don't think is harmful in this case. Yes. Back to you, Adesola. Hello? Are we on the call? The trial balloon. Interesting term. I should save that. Should read that too. Is Adesola, are you on the call?
Okay, I think her network just threw her out.
Oh, okay, Lisa.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so we have Ibrahim. Has he asked this question?
I don't think so.
Ibrahim, I've asked it on mute.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, moderator.
Yeah, good
Ibrahim,
afternoon,
are you
Ibrahim.
there?
Yeah, Ibrahim is here. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Ibrahim.
Actually, the moderator has already said my mind regarding propaganda, which is one of the ingredients of defeating maybe the enemy or the opposition. Honestly, we that are in active area in politics, we do normally propaganda to weaken our enemies. Actually, yeah, you have said it, but my question is, why is it that somebody that's in the Abuja is writing, maybe writing a false information that not happening with our PGS, mimicking what we are doing, that's discouraging our effort and our action. So how do we overcome this kind of situation?
I was really struggling to hear you, but I'll ask Lisa if she caught anything for me. But your voice was so low, I could hardly pick something.
Honestly,
I
I
think,
didn't hear it either. Okay, Adeshola, did you get what he said?
no, I didn't. I didn't.
I think we have
Hello, Ibrahim. Can you rephrase?
I said the moderator have already said on my mind regarding sharing propaganda, which is one of the ingredients of like defeating your enemy or your subordinate as we that in hard to reach area in Borno State. So normally we normally propaganda information to weaken our enemy. So, but my
Yeah.
problem is why is it that those making use of this as a yardstick to copy and paste false information without hearing from us? What is the thing from your side that maybe advice or any corrective measure that we can take to prevent such misinformation from unknown people? Thank you, sir.
I still didn't hear clearly, but let me just respond with the bits and tips I've picked from it. One of the things you said was your alignment with my perception about propaganda. I'm glad that we have some alignment there. And then the second point which you raised, which I could hardly get, I could hardly got, but I'm thinking maybe you were saying if it is so bad, why is it still? That was what I was able to pick out from it. But as really discussed, information is powerful. That people say information is powerful, and it's powerful in the hands of whoever has the wider means and medium. It could be politicians, it could be people in the government, it could be anyone. But how they choose to use it sometimes is beyond how one can determine, especially now with the availability of different mediums. And if propaganda can be used in a good way to achieve a rewarding outcome that is generally good, I don't see anything bad with that. I just hope I was able to hear you clearly. But thank you so much, Ibrahim. At least we have an alignment in that concept.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. I hope your question has been answered, Ibrahim. Thank you very much for such a wonderful session. I don't know if there's any other question, but there's none. No hands up now. So thank you very much. Really appreciate you for the detailed class, and it was very interesting, and we learned a lot. I am pretty sure every student here has learned something, and they're going to put it to use in our day-to-day lives and everything in general. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you. Miss Lisa, is there any announcement for the class?
No, there's none. Thank you, Mariam. Thank you so much, Mr. Silas. I'll just ask all the students to unmute and tell you thank you, and then we'll end the class.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the lecture. Really appreciate your lecturers and
Thank you very much.
insightful lecture.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
See you tomorrow.
It's a pleasure.
Bye.
It's a pleasure. Wonderful to be here, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Classes continue tomorrow.